Good afternoon. I hope you're all having a fine Monday afternoon. I'm in a remarkably good mood, I'll say, and not just because it is a Monday afternoon in the heat of the workday at the start of the work week, but rather remarkably good because I learned today that I have one of those absolute kick in the teeth car expenses that I'm going to have to pay. Um, I think sometimes the bigger the inconvenience, the more accepting I am of it. And very often it's those little things, those little irritations that will get the biggest reaction out of me. So that may explain my relative equanimity right now. But then also, this car has not really given me many problems in the years that I've had it. It's a very old car. It's a 2001 Chrysler Sebring, so I'm not exactly picking up a lot of hot dates with it, but when I got it, it had very few miles on it. I got it for my grandma, actually, and she only ever drove it to hair appointments. If she went further than that, my uncle would drive her around. So I got the car with something like 75,000 miles on it. And then I also don't drive very often. I'm here in the city in Minneapolis, so I walk, bike, or take the bus, and really only use the car when I go grocery shopping or out of range for either of those three things. And let me tell you, getting me to leave the city is not easy to do. So at this point, it only has something like 110,000 miles on it. That's pretty darn good for a 2001 car. And also, I've had to change the battery and have a few other things fixed on it, but it isn't much of an expense for what it is. The biggest expense that I've had leading up to this point is just the annual insurance payment. So that's also probably why I'm handling it fairly well. But I was thinking for a video today, I would count my books. Because that's going to be more fun this week than counting my money. But then also, I'd already been thinking about this a little bit. I never cared very much. You will see these videos on YouTube very often, or BookTube, where people say, 500 or 1,000 books makes a library. Let's see where I'm at. And I just never cared that much. I like watching those videos, but for me personally, I figure, well, you've got the shelf space or you don't. If you don't, get rid of some books or stop accumulating them. The number was a matter of indifference to me, but curiosity is really getting a hold of me today. So we are going to figure out actually how many books are in the library. I'm just assuming it's a library. I think I have over 1,000 books in here, so we'll figure out how many are in here and go from there. I'm not going to, keep track of how many books are in different genres or categories. I think that will be for a different day. I do sort of like the idea of eventually properly logging the books I own. When I actually do that, or if I actually do that, I think that will be the time to look at those kinds of statistics. I will admit the rest of this video, assuming I don't append it with something, is mostly going to be me counting the books. I will overlay music. I will try not to make it too long. So mostly it might be a good way for you to see my apartment. But either way, hopefully you enjoy it. I will see you in a few minutes and we'll look at how many books I actually own. So I thought it was worth making just a small note on this shelf. There are 3 books in here I'm not counting because they're textbooks, like Varian's Intermediate Microeconomics, right? That's not something you're just going to sit down and read, so I won't count it. Although it is a very, very good intermediate micro textbook. And then also in here, there's periodicals like the Independent Review, and then some very old issues, actually, that I got of Analog and Asimov. Those I'm also not counting because they're just not books. But otherwise, anything that's a proper book in here did get counted. Before I get into the total here, I'd like to give 2 special shout-outs. First of all, to my mother, and second of all, to Sister Karen. Because say what you want about Catholic school, they sure teach you how to count. Maybe it's the sins you're committing. Maybe that's why I can count so high. But either way, I do know how to count, and I exercised it this afternoon. Now, it went pretty well. There were a couple times where, I'll be honest with you, I was getting bored and would start thinking about the books I was looking at, or my mind would wander. And I was pretty confident of the count I was at, but not 100% certain. So I would recount the bookcase. And on one occasion, I got a different number than the first run around. And so I counted the bookcase a third time. And that was a little irritating, but all in all, I counted each bookcase twice, and that was the only discrepancy. So I'm pretty confident of the number here. Now, naturally, you saw me doing most of this, so you get the process I had. I would count the whole bookcase, and then at the bottom, write down the total, and those were the numbers that I punched into Excel because I don't trust myself with a calculator. When I did finish all the bookcases, I then went around the apartment and counted the stray books, so to speak, because sometimes you have a book that you're referencing because you're reading something else at the moment. So I had a couple of those laying around, a couple books I'm working on, also TBR books, books I took off the shelf and forgot to put back. Those were around, but I counted the strays afterward, and that was its own row in my total. I would have used the calculator just on my iPhone, but I don't know about you guys, but even when I was in advanced math classes, sometimes I would do a basic math problem, addition, subtraction, multiplication, whatever, on the calculator like 4 times just to be sure. I was more confident in my derivatives than I was in my adding and subtracting. So that's why I threw the numbers in Excel and just used the sum function. And we have a total here. The total is 1,630, so it definitely is a library. And I will say it was useful to put your finger on each of the books because I saw things as I was going through that I probably don't need to keep. And also it brought to mind some things that I don't have that I want to keep an eye out for. So it was a useful exercise, even though this number isn't, especially meaningful to me, although it is interesting in a vague kind of way. I think the 2 things that had me thinking the most about, though, was, first of all, these 2... I don't know what you'd call them, but I've turned them into bookcases that lead into the kitchen. I know they're supposed to clearly be for glasses and chinaware and whatnot, but they're perfect for mass markets, and they're a disaster. So this gave me at least one project, which is to go through these in detail, get rid of some stuff, organize it, and whatnot. So that was the first thing. But then also the shelves behind where I have the camera right now are classics, and I don't love those, but they're perfect for right now. Eventually down the road when I buy a place, when that investment that I threw my life savings into, the the alpaca farm in Uzbekistan. When that really hits it off, I'll be able to buy a nice place. But until then, I'm stuck with these. And when I do have a new couch and I can build my own shelving, I would love to build proper wraparound shelves to go and sort of hug the couch. I do like the idea and the look of that. I mean, of course, we all want those floor to ceiling built in bookcases that are uniform. There's something nice about that, but I don't want it all to be just that. I like some mismatching bookcases. I think that has a nice aesthetic to it. But then also just having them in different spots, lower bookcases that run along the couch or maybe run along a windowsill. I would love eventually to be able to build those or pay a friend of mine to build them and then I'll organize them. I think that would be great. And so that kind of thing was on my mind too. But in terms of what's more immediate, I probably have too many books, depending on how you define that. I mean, 1,630 is a ton of books. It's certainly a luxury, I'll admit that. But on the other hand, I think too many is when you have stacks on the floor, and I don't. So maybe in another way not. But then also, I do have a bit of organizing to do. So this was fun. Now, with the way things are going, this is going to be under a 20-minute video, and we cannot have that. So I thought we would take a look at my classic shelves that I was just talking about. When I did a apartment tour earlier this year, I spent too much time on some nonfiction shelves, and a lot of people said, we wish you would have, dwelled on the classics a little bit longer. So I thought we would do that right now, and then we'll wrap this all up. We just can't have a 10-15 minute video. That's not acceptable for David Murphy. And I think you guys will find that interesting. So 1,630 books, and let's move on and look at the classics in detail. As you can see, I have my classics organized on these weird quadrant target shelving units. And the issue is ultimately that they're in quadrants. So you can see, although the books sitting vertically but lined up horizontally fit just fine, however, when you flip that and you try to stack things vertically with the books horizontally, you can't actually do two stacks and you end up with those empty spaces. If you were building your own shelving for books, you wouldn't do it that way. But given the number of classics that I have and the way I have things organized about in the apartment, this is working just fine. And you can see I still have space to add books, so I shouldn't complain too much. It's just a temporary option until I build my own shelving. We'll look at these in a minute. Let's spin along the back. We'll start at the top, look at the books facing the windows, and then move around this other side of these. Also, I'll add that I did get these initially because I had two of them stacked along the wall. Right here is where I had them stacked, and it nicely closed in my living space without, my living room, pardon me, without, completely shutting it down. And then recently I reorganized the apartment and tried it this way. And although this is closed off a bit more, as you can see, this is the way you get in here, it doesn't feel tiny, and I think it's because it is really no higher than the couch itself. And as we're over here, you can see that although the couch cushions spill up a little bit over the books, the hard back of the couch does line up with the top of those shelving units. So I think it still has an aesthetic appeal, I suppose, to it still. So I'm going to keep it like this for a little bit. All right, with that out of the way, let's look at the books in detail, which I think is really what you're interested in, not me nattering about trying to get the feng shui of my apartment just right. So starting on the left here, of course, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with these. We have the Everyman's Library editions. And really, if you were building your own library and money wasn't an issue, I think it probably would be some function or some combination, pardon me, of Everyman's Library editions with Library of America editions. I think you would just, they'd last forever and it would look so lovely, and they are also really nice. So on the left here we have, well, let's start at the top actually. We have these small portable editions they make. I think these are virtually all poetry, and so they do things that are author-based. So here I have Kipling because I'm a big fan, and then also theme-based, so maybe it's dogs, or in this instance, love poems, because I have a slightly sentimental side. Or maybe I still just don't understand it and I'm trying to figure it out. But they're great things you can collect because they're so small and still a little bit pricey because they are quality. I tend to only grab them if I see them used book shopping. But going on to their full-size editions here, on the left we have this set of Tolstoy's short stories. Now, this was quite pricey if you were to buy it just off the shelf, but it was at my used bookstore, so it was discounted a little bit right there, but it was still too expensive. And it was sitting there just for some time, and I kept looking at it and just not being willing to spend the money. But finally, I brought a couple bags of books in, got a good chunk of credit, and pulled the trigger and grabbed them because I'm a huge fan of Tolstoy and I love his short stories, so I'm really happy to have that. It is pretty new. I haven't dug into them, looked at what's in there, what's not in there, to see what the translations are or anything like that. So I don't have much to say beyond that. But the only thing I'll add is if you are interested in Tolstoy's shorter fiction, the Penguin Classics and Oxford editions are just fine to go for. Obviously, they're more affordable, but I also quite like the translations, especially, for example, what would be a great starting point? I guess the Penguin Classics edition of Master and Man and Other Stories. I think that would be a great one to start with. Of course, Master and Man is a fantastic short story, and I think it's the last one in that collection. But also, how much land does a man need? I think that will stick with you as well. So that's a fine thing to go for, too. But pressing on, we have the Brothers Karamazov, of course. I think this might be the Peviar and Volokhonsky translation. Yes, it is. I don't love that, so I don't actually know if I'll keep this edition. I much prefer, I'm blanking on it at the moment, but I much prefer whatever the Penguin Classics edition translation is. So I don't know if I'll actually hang on to this. Of course, it looks nice on the shelf and I like the edition, so there's a good chance that I'll just keep it until I move, but we'll see. Or until I find a replacement copy for my Penguin edition because it's in sort of rush shape. But going on, we have A Sportsman Notebook, and then A Day in the Life, of course, and then we have Thomas Mann, Dr. Faustus. I need more Thomas Mann. I think I have one or two, maybe, and that'll be on the other side of the couch here. And then we have something I spent a good amount of time with, actually, the essays of George Orwell. I would say the essays of George Orwell, the Edmund Burke edition, and then the Kipling collected stories are the three that I spend the most time with. I do also have the New Testament and Mark Twain's collected nonfiction, but those are the three I go to the most. I would love to have, I don't know who puts it out, but I would love to have that collected Orwell letters and essays, where they're nice big hardcovers, and I think each volume is a different color. I just love those so much. I need everything by Orwell because I still have the idea in my head that I'm going to work through it all and figure out what it is about this guy that makes some people so locked onto him. A classic example, of course, is Christopher Hitchens, but George Packer is one too. There's all these guys who talk about him with this weird tone, and I want to figure it out. I mean, I'm definitely a fan of Orwell. I like him, but he doesn't do to me whatever he did to those guys, and I have this weird idea that I'm going to figure it out if I work through everything. So anyway, those are the Everman's Library editions that I have. Going on here, we get to the Great Library of America volumes. So this is new. I haven't gone through any of these yet. This is the Western, so this is 4 classic novels of the 40s and 50s. I think Shane is the only one of those 4 that I've read. And then here we have Ambrose Bierce. I am a big fan. I haven't read everything in here, but I've read a fair amount of him because there was a piece years ago in the Weekly Standard. I don't actually think you can find the link, by searching it online. You have to use the Wayback Machine. If I can remember, I'll include it down below. If I don't and you want to, read it, let me know in the comments down below or email me. But in the Weekly Standard, Andrew Ferguson wrote a piece about Bierce that was so good. It's not long, but it's excellent. The Weekly Standard used to have a great literary section, arts and culture section, and that was one of the best pieces I remember reading in it, and it set me on Bierce. But I can't spend this much time on each volume, so we need to press on. Then we have Hofstadter, of course, his classic intellectualism, and the paranoid style, and then I think it's just essays. Yeah. And then we have Reporting World War II. And these are great additions because actually there's stuff in here that isn't collected, I think, in other volumes, or a lot of the authors here don't have their own printed collections. Certainly nothing that's in print anymore. I mean, maybe somebody can check on a Google search, but I don't believe Dorothy Thompson has, for example, any collections out there you can get, but she's in there and she's wonderful. So those are nice ones to have if you're interested in reading that kind of thing. And then here we have H.L. Mencken, who I am a fan of. I know he's not for everybody. And this is the Prejudices collection. You can also buy this as a box set, and I used to have the box set, but got rid of it. I think I like these particular volumes a little bit better. I mean, they contain the same thing, but this classic standard print, I prefer. And when I found these used shopping, I replaced them with that set that I have. I was set on Mencken, God, years and years ago. It was either because of his book on democracy or it was his famous essay on Thorstein Veblen. I don't remember which anymore. It was so long ago. But at least the piece on Veblen is on one of these. I think it might be the first volume, but I don't recall anymore. And then here we have John Kenneth Galbraith, of course, somebody who gets on my nerves with, how wrong he is. So what is this? This is like almost 1,000 pages of wrong economics, but he is a really great writer, really entertaining, sharp guy, of course. He is worth reading, so I am very happy to have him on hand. And then a newer one that's come out recently is Hannah Arendt's Origins of Totalitarianism, which is a favorite book of mine. You should read this. In particular, so this was originally published, I think, in 1951, and then there was a reprint in 1958. I can check here. And the 1958, I think I have that right, reprint included a couple new chapters. Okay, I skipped the copyright material, but one of the new chapters is on the previous page. What's it called? It's on ideology. Yeah, it's Ideology and Terror. That's one of the best. It's a great example of so many chapters in this book where, of course, the whole thing is terrific, but you will reread whole parts of this just in isolation and still get a lot out of them. It is such a good book. Okay, let's see if I can do this. I really shouldn't be doing this right now, but oh well. So 48, okay, so maybe 48, maybe 51 was the US printing, and then 68 was the one where they came out with the additional material. I think that's right. Perhaps 48 is a UK publication. Anyway, Origins of Totalitarianism. I know Eichmann in Jerusalem is popular on BookTube, but I really wish more people would read Origins of Totalitarianism. And then we have Edgar Allan Poe, Essays and Reviews, and yes, he did write such things, and they're very good, not just stories. But I haven't read a ton of them. I've read a good amount, and frankly, just out of this volume. But one of these days, I should give that a dedicated read-through. And then here we have more Mark Twain. So we saw here we have his collected nonfiction, and I very much do prefer his nonfiction. And that is what a good chunk of this is, but it also contains tales and stuff. And that Everyman's Library edition, and then these Library of America editions, I do go to quite a bit. Not so much the unabridged editions. And I will admit, these two hardbacks are new. One of you was nice enough to send them to me. I had the paperback, but I never touched it because I was always afraid it was going to fall apart. I mean, it's just as big as these. I had the paperback of the first volume, I should say. And you could tell by holding the thing that it might snap in half while you were reading it, so I never touched it and instead went to volumes like this. Now that I have the two hardbacks, maybe I'll go to these more. We'll see. They are huge, so a little bit inconvenient. And then going on, we have more running press editions, or a running press edition, pardon me. And I should specify that Running Press didn't do tons of unabridged volumes, and I don't know what the complete list is. I know they did Twain. I know they did Edgar Allan Poe. I think they did Jack London too, but I don't know beyond that. I'm sure you can find the list online, but they really are lovely things. And this is the one I go to the most of the Running Press editions I have. I love that Edgar Allan Poe. I don't know why, what explains me, going to this more than this for his nonfiction. but maybe it's because it also has fiction in there. So just when I want him, that's what I think of to go to. And then here we have Democracy in America by de Tocqueville. Of course, it's fantastic, and you should read it. I'm trying to think if this is the only version of this I have. I believe I have the Penguin Classic, but these I got earlier this year or maybe last year, and when I need to go to de Tocqueville, I go to these rather than the Penguin paperback. Pressing on here, we have the Palliser novels, Anthony Trollope, in these nice hardcover editions put out by Oxford. These are great, and I think I have most or all of these in Oxford paperbacks, but I can't bring myself to part with these hardbacks. I just think this is a really nice little set. And then finally, ending the shelf, we have a good amount of poetry. So we have this Norton World Poetry Edition, and this is the one I go to the most. I am not a poetry guru, to put it mildly, but from what I understand, this is considered a fairly eclectic collection, and I've just found that I like what's in it, just opening it from time to time. These other ones, this fourth edition of the Norton Anthology of Poetry, and then the Oxford Book of American Poetry, I hardly touch, and I need to. I need to spend time every week reading some poetry. We'll see. And then, of course, we have the top 500 poems. I'm sure you've seen that out and about. He did have a top 100 poems, and I think that was a huge bestseller for him, William Harmon. And I think out of the success of that, he did the top 500 poems. I think I'm correct about that. And then going on here, we have some odds and ends, like the Norton Anthology of English Literature. This is the third or fourth? The fourth edition, it says right there. And I go to these quite a bit, actually. I really like these. And then we have the Companion to the English Language, which is actually a reference work, but more entertaining than you would think. There's some great stuff in there. And then finally on the end here, we have this Modern American Usage by Wilson Follett, which is a really entertaining, sort of cranky, frankly, book. Just an old book on usage, and it can be really fun to go to and turn to sometimes. And then similarly, we have Pullman, The Truth About English Grammar. This is brand new, got it a couple weeks ago, so I can't say too much about the volume, but the author used to have a blog, and this is how I discovered him. He may still have the blog. I don't know if it's up and running. I haven't checked in years, but I stumbled on him because he wrote some pieces absolutely savaging the Da Vinci Code. And I just thought they were so good. And then I saw that he came out with this book on Amazon. I think it just popped up as a recommendation, and I grabbed it. So hopefully I'll get to that soon. So as a start, I don't think that's too bad, but I do need to be a little bit faster. Let's go around the backside. All right, I'm back, and we are here to film this side of these shelves. However, I should clarify one thing and apologize for one thing too. So maybe you can tell from the lighting, but I've been gone for a few hours. As I was, walking around and adjusting the camera to film the additional classics shelves, I got a call from my mechanic to go pick up my car. So I went and did that, got the keys, and then sat in the car for a little bit and just cried, as one does. And then because I was over on that part of town, I did grab dinner with a friend who lives over there. And so that accounts for the significant delay in time. Now, I did have to take the bus, obviously, to go get my car because I didn't have it. And while I was on the bus ride, I did rewatch the segment where I filmed this side of these cases. And it was fairly shaky, which surprised me because I was more or less sober for it. Joking. But I really do think that was accounted for by the fact that I was simply holding the tripod and then leaning over the couch to get to the books. So I'm sorry if that was excessively distracting. While filming these sides of the cases, I will be sure to make sure the camera is stationary. And also, I will try to be slow enough to where you can see all the classics books because I passed over them so quickly in my previous video, but a little faster as well. I do not need to be opening books and looking at copyright dates. So with that clarification and a little bit of apology there, let's get through these and let's look at the rest of my classics. So I think we're just going to handle this back half at the top anyway, in the same way we did the other side. We'll work left to right, but then once we move down to the quadrants, I'll try to handle each shelving unit on its own. And I think that'll work just fine. So on the left here, we're starting off a little bit heavy. This is Natural Supernaturalism by M.H. Abrams. And this was a footnote buy for me. And then following up on it, it sounds like when this was published, it was considered, you know, a serious work. It's about, well, it says right here, tradition and revolution in romantic literature. Now, I have to say, I've only read a select number of chapters out of this, because I bought it specifically for the sections on Hegel and Carlyle, which I think were the chapters referenced in that other book I was reading. And then I read a little bit beyond that because I was so impressed. But I definitely did get the impression you would get more out of this if you had a lot of familiarity with the authors and works that's being referenced throughout the book. So definitely a serious piece of scholarship. I was really impressed by it, and I should maybe try to revisit it. It's been maybe 8 years since I picked it up, so perhaps I'd be less intimidated by it now. But the chapters where he was talking about authors I was familiar with, I was deeply impressed. So take that for what it's worth. It's probably worth digging into. And then here we have Gary Saul Morrison, Anna Karenina in Our Time. And this is really just the book version of his essay, The Moral Urgency of Anna Karenina. So if you read that and like that and you want more, that'd be the natural thing to get, but probably not necessary. This is an oddity. I'm not going to go into this. This is Literature and the Economics of Liberty, Spontaneous Order and Culture. I think it's really good, but I also don't feel like I have the literary or the chops in classics to talk about this at great length, so I'm reluctant to, but I thought it was a fascinating book. And then we have Schoenbaum's Shakespeare's Lives, and this is a fantastic volume too. We have a couple other Shakespeare's here, and books about Shakespeare, I should say. Shakespeare and the Earl of Southampton, and then also Schoenbaum, his biography of Shakespeare, The Complete Pelican Shakespeare, The Friendly Shakespeare, which is a lovely little book, and then this edition of Hamlet that I like. I will say I especially enjoyed this because he's looking at people trying to get to the real Shakespeare throughout time. So a lot of the sections in here are periods of time, and then within the sections, he breaks it down further. But the very first one deals with the documentation and what we have, and so it's fascinating. And I have seen this relatively frequently at bookstores, so it should be accessible. But I haven't read either Shakespeare and the Earl of Southampton or his biography, so this is the only one I could speak to. But of course, I've read Out of the Pelican, and this is a really nice floppy paperback if you see it around. And these are also good additions to have, too. And then we have the Riverside Chaucer, which I have not gone to. And I think it's just because I'm afraid it isn't going to hold up. It's a lovely thing, and it's got these double columns in it, but you can just feel holding it well. It's a nice, great brick in the hand, and I really enjoy that. This clearly isn't going to be suitable for annotations, and I'm not sure how it will hold up. So it's something I like having, I think, more than having something that's really useful to read out of, if you see what I mean. And then we have the Divine Comedy. I have not read that translation, although it is my understanding it's an excellent one. And then Bulfinch's Mythology, of course, which everybody knows. And right at the end there, before I move the camera, we have Samuel Richardson's Clarissa, which I still have not tackled. And I should, and it's a really nice Viking hardcover. There's a part of me that feels like maybe it's going to be a winter read, something like that. We'll see, but I've wanted to for years. If anybody can vouch for it and push me over the edge, go ahead down in the comments. But the longer it sits, the less likely it is that I'll get to it. So I think maybe this winter or even next year, I should finally sit down and pull the trigger. Okay, let's press on. Now, this small book on the end here, this is Washington Irving, and it's my understanding that this is one volume in a set that was popular something like 100 years ago. And I've had this for years, waiting and waiting, hoping I would see those other volumes, and I simply haven't. So this is a good time for me to think about either going online and finding those volumes, or simply getting rid of this and collecting Washington Irving in different editions. I love the stuff from him that I've read, but this has been collecting dust for a while, so I need to make a decision on that. And then here we have a couple Reader's Digest editions and a Harvard Classics edition. And I think of these formats in the same category as like the Franklin Library. Maybe that's not fair, but I think it sort of comes from their boring but fairly stately design. I don't usually collect them, maybe for its that reason alone, which is relatively shallow. But when I will admit, when they do have a volume that's really good, it's really good. And the Dr. Zhivago in the Reader's Digest line is a standout, in my opinion. I did originally read Dr. Zhivago in a different edition, a different translation from this, and I liked it, but I didn't love it that much. And then I read it here, and I very much like this translation better, and I especially like this copy. So if you've been thinking about getting the book and are looking for which one to buy, I would at least consider this. And then, of course, Treasure Island is great. Plutarch is also great, although I'm a little indifferent about this particular edition. Pressing on, we have War and Peace. This is, I think, the Garnett translation. Yep, Garnett. And then this one, I don't know who this is. I'll be honest with you. I just bought this because it looks like Gandalf is on the cover, so that's why I got it. I don't know how many copies of Tolstoy I have around here, but I think I probably have 3 volumes of War and Peace, and I probably don't need to admit how many copies of Anna Karenina, although you'll also find out. And so getting past that, we have Don Quixote, which I have not read, but have been meaning to for years. There's just nothing driving me towards it, to be honest, other than seeing people enthuse about it. And maybe what's stopping me is also the mixed reactions that I have. You know, you very much hear it's the tale of two books, if you'll excuse the literary metaphor coming and talking about an entirely different book. But I do need to read this, and I think this is the translation to have from what I've heard and what I've read, the Grossman translation. Here we have Treasure Island again. Oh my gosh, I forgot that I bought this. So I am going to flip through this and see if there's any reason for me to have it over the Reader's Digest edition and get rid of it. Okay, that was good. See, that's why this is useful too. I'm surprised actually how few duplicates I've run into as I was counting my books. It was nice, but I didn't notice that when I was heading through. And then as you can see here, we spill into some Norton Critical editions, so let's take those at a slightly different angle. So you can see here that I have a nice spread of Norton Critical editions in the older formats here and the newer ones. And they both, whatever the older or newer format, come in different sizes. So of course we have, what would be an example, the Prince here in this older edition. And then I also have another copy of The Prince in the newer edition, so I really need to just pick one to keep. I'll leave them on the top for that reason. But in the wider formats here and the smaller formats, and that's true in older and newer ones, is what I'm trying to say. So just briefly going through them, I have another copy of the Brothers Karamazov. I do not need 3. We have Darwin, and incidentally, this is the copy of Darwin I've found recently. I've gone to the most. I also have, I think, 2 others, the Penguin Classics edition, and then a really nice large hardcover that Barnes & Noble put out years ago, which is incidentally behind me. And this is nice because it's the Darwin Compendium, and just an adorable, great volume. But for whatever reason, I've been going to this one, so it's great. And then we have Tennyson's poetry. I love Tennyson. The poets I go to the most as writers and outside of anthologies are probably Tennyson and Kipling. And I will say, the more I dabble in him, I need to give it a little bit more time, but I think Browning might be the third in that triplicate as I familiarize myself. But I love this Tennyson volume. And then anyway, we have the Canterbury Tales, Middlemarch, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Last time I reread this, it wasn't in this copy, but 2 times ago it was. And then Beowulf, Miss Dalloway, The Great Gatsby. What is this? Classic fairy tales, Frankenstein, The Mayor of Casterbridge, The Souls of Black Folk, Robert Browning, Wide Sargasso Sea, and then finally Paradise Lost. And you know what? I just wouldn't mind having a whole bookcase of these. I love them so much. I'll put these back for now and then decide later which one I'm going to keep and get rid of. These are the best. I just love Norton Critical Editions. I think just in terms of usability, though, I like the newer ones in the smaller format. I think they're more attractive and just a little more comfortable in the hand. But, you know, I don't really buy these new. I find them used, so I'll take what comes to me. All right, so let's finish off the end of this bookcase, and hopefully lighting doesn't fail us. Ending this top part, we have The Sagas of the Icelanders. Of course, this seems to be on every bookcase on BookTube. These Penguin Deluxe editions are wonderful, and this one in particular. If you've been thinking about it, I'll tell you right now, there's a reason that you seem to see it on every bookcase. And then we have The Three Musketeers by Dumas. My understanding is that this Ellsworth translation is the one to have. I haven't read it yet, so I can't say for certain, but from a variety of reviews I've read and also a trusted source I have, it's supposed to be extremely good. And then something I do know a lot about, we have Anna Karenina. This is the Yale edition. It's the Schwartz translation and has the introduction by Gary Saul-Morson I referenced before, which is just a reprint of The Moral Urgency of Anna Karenina, which was originally published, I think, in Commentary magazine. It is not as readable as other translations of Anna Karenina, I think, but from what I understand, it's a truer translation, if you will. So it's definitely something I would read a little bit out of and compare to other translations before you actually buy it, if you can find it in a bookstore or something, just to make sure you're getting a translation that is right for you. And then here we have these awesome Doubleday, I think, right? Yeah, Doubleday Kipling volumes. I love these so much. The only frustration is in this second volume I have, the sticker I pulled off of it here, you can see damaged it slightly. It's not too bad, so I'm keeping the volume, but I really would like to find one that isn't damaged and then put a Mylar jacket on it in the same way that I have in volume 1. And then we have The Once and Future King. I think one of 3 copies of this book I have. I absolutely love it. But this one's quite faded, so I wouldn't mind getting a new hardcover. And then we have Tolkien. We have these editions that I think are pretty common right now. Of course, ending with the box set. The only issue I'll say with these box sets, if you've been thinking about getting them, is that although the artwork around them is lovely and there is the fact that it's a box set that's quite nice, they aren't illustrated editions, whereas many of these standalone volumes are illustrated. So like this one in particular has Alan Lee's. But, you know, The Unfinished Tales has a wonderful illustrated edition that's standalone, like the volumes I have here, but this one here isn't illustrated, and so while the box set is nice, that's a little bit frustrating. I think they're a little bit older, but these oversized volumes, so this is the Silmarillion, but you can get Lord of the Rings in exactly these same formats. These older ones I really do like quite a bit. I think people are passing them by now, but also lovely illustrations by Ted Naismith. So that is the Tolkien that I have. I do have another floppy paperback that's a single volume Lord of the Rings like this that I go to a lot, but I actually go to it so much it's on my bedside away from the other sets. So that's the top part. Let's press on. And actually, I was about to move to these bottom shelves, but I'm realizing behind the camera is where I keep all the Viking Portable editions. So let's turn around, look at those, and then move to these bottom shelves. So these are the Viking Portable editions that I have, and you can tell, like with, I don't know, the Norton Criticals, that they've gone through a lot of evolutions in their print run, but I will say it's more true of the Viking Portables than it is almost any other. It is frankly pointless to try and collect these in whatever your favorite edition is. So I, in particular, like these older ones with the photograph of the author in the top corner. And I have a lot of them, but don't even try. Just don't even try. You're not going to be able to do it. Just get them as you find them if you can. They are lovely. Some of them make more sense than others. The thematic ones tend to work really well. So some of my favorites are the Enlightenment Reader and the Conservative Reader. Actually, the Conservative Reader is a great little anthology if you're interested in political thought. I think it is glanced over a lot or maybe forgotten, but it's one to have. Some of the ones for authors are also, of course, fantastic. I think the Dorothy Parker one is good. The Veblen one is really nice. But some also don't make a lot of sense. I shouldn't say they don't make sense, but they take some creativity to make work. And I think it takes a special kind of reader to enjoy them. So maybe the best example of that is actually further down here, if you'll pardon me, and it's the Portable Tolstoy. I mean, how do you make that work? Right? How do you make that work? I mean, Anna Karenina and War and Peace together, you're getting close to 2,000 pages. How are you going to do a Portable Tolstoy? If you've already read him, I think it's a fun thing to read just to see how he pulls it off. But outside of that, it's a difficult thing. So these are great volumes to have. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but that's, I think, a decent overview. I'm fairly attached to them. If I had to seriously cull my library, I think this would be a concentration of books that would definitely stick around. I have read several of these. I haven't read them all. I've dipped into at least most of them. And I have some, like I'm saying here, that I'm attached to. I love the Kipling edition. I go out with that sometimes. I like the Poe edition, the Conservative edition, the Medieval Reader. You know, some of these I have an affinity for, but I should, as a reading project at some point, make a dedicated go-through of them. But for now, for what we're doing here, we'll just glance at them and then try to get through this and finish my bottom shelves that we had started on. All right. Now we're finally into the Penguin Classics that I've been talking about so much, and as you can see here, we have a little concentration of nonfiction. Looking at it in detail, it isn't as organized as it ought to be. I have a feeling when I redid all these shelves, I put the books on here just to have them on here and didn't pay too much attention to having them in a good order, so I'll have to address that at some point. So, I mean, obviously, looking at it, you can see Marx's Volume 1 of Capital is here, and then his early writings are down here. They should be together. Incidentally, three things, I guess. I only have Volume 1. I have the other two volumes as e-copies, but Penguin's 3 volumes are really nice, and you won't have any problem if you pick them up. I think, in terms of Volume 1, the Princeton University pressed volume, as a translation, and admittedly with one glaring exception, the critical apparatus, it is superior to this. But, you know, go with either. You'll be just fine. But the early writing specifically in the Penguin edition is really nice. So if you're looking at Capital Volume 1, I would gently push you toward the Princeton translation. But in terms of the early writings, this is definitely a good one to have. Although, of course, you know, Marx is all free online, too. But then we have Praise of Folly, Erasmus, Robinson Crusoe in these cloth-bound ones. I think this is the only one I have. I don't, frankly, like them very much. So that's probably why I think I saw this used and I didn't have Robinson Crusoe. So it's maybe even a placeholder until I see a traditional paperback. And then we do, in fact, have the other Democracy in America. And I go to it sometimes. Of course, I have tabs in it, but I do prefer those hardbacks. And then we have The Education of Henry Adams. Mill and Bentham, it's a collection on utilitarianism. This is a nice addition. I go to this volume more for Bentham than Mill, just because I have Mill in different copies that I prefer. Then we have Mill's On Liberty, also just a fine edition to have in Penguin Classics, but I have him elsewhere. Adam Smith, A Theory of Moral Sentiments. This is a good edition to have, but I think the Liberty Fund edition has better critical notes, but
this is a great one. This is what I originally read it in, and you'll be fine with it too. Then here we have Origin of Species. This is what I first read it in, and then I did the Norton Critical later, and I go to the Norton Critical more. But this, likewise, notes and all, is a great one to have. And then we have the Essential Canes. This is actually, if you're interested in canes, I would just get this, frankly. If you are more academic, not academic, that I don't want to sound snobbish. If you're a grad student in economics and you want to read Keynes, you don't need this. You need to just go to Keynes. But if you are a more general interest reader and you want to read Keynes, see what it's all about, this is the one to get. And he is great to read, of course. I mean, the economic consequences of the piece is fantastic. But you don't need to read, everything out of the general theory. You don't need to read about everything in his theory on money and whatnot. This will be just fine for a more general reader. That's all I'm trying to convey. Eichmann in Jerusalem, Hannah Arendt, talked about that before. The fantastic Max Weber, The Protestant Work Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. Somebody who I think is referenced more than read, incidentally, nowadays. He is worth reading, I think. And then the Thomas Paine Reader, also a nice addition. So these are this is actually a really solid shelf. These are great Penguin classics. Let's press on. Here we're getting into fiction now, and this shelf is also more of a mixed bag in terms of what I've read and haven't read. So we have The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, which I have read and like, and then Guys and Dolls and Other Writings, which I've had for years and years and simply have never touched. So if there's any Damon Runyon fans out there who really think I ought to get to it, please say so down below. I've just never had any reason to go to that book, and I think I've kept it because it's a Penguin classic, and I just don't tend to get rid of them. So that'll be something I should make a decision on. And then we have Arthur Conan Doyle, The Hound of the Baskervilles, which I sort of like, I guess. I have a feeling when it comes to Conan Doyle, the problem's me and not him, but he just hasn't worked on me in the way that he does for so many other people. And I don't think I've gone to him in 2 years or so. Just needed some space before I try again, so I really ought to. Because like I said, I do think the problem is probably me. And then we have The Guide, which I've read a little bit out of. That was also something I bought based on, I think, a history book I was reading. It was referenced. And then we have Elizabeth Glaskill, North and South. I have not read that either. Over here we have The Portable Arthur Miller, which I've read out of and quite like, but I haven't read it cover to cover. We have Franz Kafka, The Castle, which I love. We have Saul Bellow, The Victim, which is the only Saul Bellow I've read, and I liked it. I won't say more than that. I liked it. I liked it well enough to read more Bellow, but I didn't have the weird, almost quasi-religious experience that, Martin Amis seemed to have out of reading him. And then we have Thomas Mann, again, so I do have more of him. We have Death in Venice and Other Stories. Another tale, excuse me. We have The Babel, although this is falling apart. I have a page, you can see it here, like this elevated page. That's actually torn out of the book, and I have several that are like that, so I need a new edition of the Bible. I think I want to get the Oxford edition. I quite like the looks of that one. And then we have Chaucer, again, we've already seen him. And then Thomas Malory, I think I have a hardcover of that actually, and that's only the first volume. And then we have the second volume next to it, and we have finally Ariosto. We have Orlando Furioso, which I have attempted, but not actually finished. And I don't think it was because I didn't like it. From what I remember, it was just the wrong time for me, meaning life was too busy for me to invest in it the way that I wanted to. So I need to go back and read that. Actually, I really want to, so this is useful as a reminder. So that's that shelf. Again, a bit of a mixed bag. Let's go to the bottom here before we move further down the line. Okay, you'll have to forgive me. I'm working with weird angles here, but this is a bit of a mix. Okay, so we have Virginia Woolf, and this end piece of Virginia Woolf too is just incredibly faded. It's the essays of her. I need Virginia Woolf in hardback editions. I don't know if they exist. I feel like I always see Harcourt editions in a variety of different formats and then not hardcovers. I don't know if they don't put out hardcovers or if it's put out by a different publisher or what, but I would love to have them. I don't especially like these paperbacks that I have. I will say I love Virginia Woolf's nonfiction. I have yet to like her fiction. I haven't tried in a long time, and I'm willing to admit it might be me, but I haven't really liked anything I've read. It's been years. I'll try again, okay? All right, I'll try again. And then here we get into George Orwell. And of course, these are wonderful editions, also Harcourt. And those are just the ones I have them in, and I love them. Although Virginia Woolf is down there, she needs to move here too. I don't know what other edition I would get for George Orwell. I don't know if there's any other must-have editions. These are all his novels, which I pretty much like them all and love none of them. So, do what you will with that. Whereas with his nonfiction, I do love some of his nonfiction. The closest I get to loving his fiction is probably 1984 and Animal Farm, which are easy answers. I'm sure the hipster pick would be The Road to Wigan Pier coming up for air or something like that. But I think people tend to really like those volumes, like Christopher Hitchens, for example, for, shall we say, non-literary reasons, but maybe I'm cynical. And then here we have Stuart Little, A Confederacy of Dunces, which I have not read this, and then the wonderful The Uncommon Reader, which is just marvelous. So that's that shelf. Let's move on here to the NYRB Classics. Okay, and now we have these NYRB editions, and I'm fighting two things here. This is very unprofessional of me. One is that I've only read a few of these, like the Longships, which I love, and then also I've read, not this edition of Lionel Trilling, but probably everything in this because I've read quite a bit of Lionel Trilling. So that's one thing, whereas I have not read Vasily Grossman at all, for example, or almost any of these other volumes, so that's a little bit embarrassing. But the other thing is, I don't have my glasses on, and like this red on blue text, I don't know what that says. Well, since I said it, I have to take it off and look. Okay, this is Margaret Leach. Oh, this is Reveille in Washington. Okay, this is actually a great volume. That I have read. It's an odd book, but that I have read. But not much beyond that. God, okay, let's see if I can do this. This is Fortunes of War. I have not read this, but it's a volume in a trilogy, and when I did buy this, one of you messaged me on Instagram about the author and this trilogy of books, and it sounded fascinating, so I think that was probably a good buy. And then we have the collected essays of Elizabeth Hardwick. I dipped into these, and I liked what was there, so I need to work through all of them, and I think there are one or two other collections of her that NYRB puts out, so if I get through this and I like it, I'll pick up the rest. This is, I can't read it. This is The Murderess. This I don't know anything about, actually. So if you can tell me, put it down below. I have a feeling this was on a bargain shelf. And then we just talked about this and the Longships. Both are good. And then we have Vasily Grossman. We have Everything Flows. And then we have Kolyma Stories, which I've read some out of and liked. And then Life and Fate in Stalingrad, which I have not read out of, which is odd for being such a World War II guy. And also, I guess we could say that for this, too. And then finally, we have the stories of, I can't read it, of J.F. Powers. And I also don't know anything about that, and I left a sticker on it. Okay, you see, this is where this comes from. It was at Majors and Quinn. It was $1.75. That's why I got it. But I'm not the fiction guy, so I haven't gotten to these, and I need to. So likewise, for any of these volumes where I'm stumbling a little bit, I'll admit, again, this isn't very professional, but if you like them and you think I should get to them, give me a reason other than that I owe them. All right, let's get out. This is a disaster. Let's move on to the next shelf. Now we have just a small handful of Wordsworth classics. I don't have any beyond this, but I will say I quite like the volumes. I don't like at all these older ones, just for whatever reason, but these newer ones I love, and I wish I saw more of them. Cheap, anyway, and I mean, all of them are cheap, but used is what I'm saying. I know, for example, like this John Buchan just looks tacky, probably, but I love it. I absolutely love this. And also, some of the collections are nice to have too. So, although I absolutely can't stand Nietzsche, this Human, All Too Human, and Beyond Good and Evil is a nice copy to have. Incidentally, I read this 10 years ago when I was in Europe, and you can tell that David 10 years ago took took very different kinds of notes and a lot more details than he does now. So I would like a replacement copy for that anyway. Not that I'm spilling over a lot of Nietzsche. Oh, and here's The Spoke. This should be with this. So just a fine little collection I have. I especially like, I guess, this Nietzsche volume, even though I hate the author. I do like the O. Henry, and I like the John Buchan. And I'd like to have more, honestly. There's just, again, at the risk of repeating myself, although they're tacky, I just love them. Okay, let's go on to more Penguin Classics. Okay, now here, again, it's a little bit of a mix, but you can see we're getting into some classics proper. So while there's the Deptford trilogy at the top there, we have Virgil, the Oresteia, we have Suetonius, Homer, Sophocles, Homer, which should be together, Ovid, what else do we have? Plato, Aristotle, and is that Thucydides? Yeah, the Peloponnesian War. And I love all these Penguin Classics, but I do need replacements because these were pretty beat up and also taped up. So these will work fine for a while, and they are holding up when I need to go to them. But I think slowly I'll have to get new copies of them. I think the ones I could probably get rid of for now are the Platos, because I do have all of Plato in different editions, and I don't go to these very often. So those can probably go, and then I can find new Penguins, and that'll work just fine. But I think from here, I have a little bit of guilting myself going on. Like, I've had the Count of Monte Cristo forever, never read it. It's huge. Everybody reads it on BookTube. I have no plans to get to it, and sometimes I think it's there just to guilt myself into eventually getting to it. And that's not a good reason to read a book. You should read it because you want to. And then also, I don't know why I have this copy of Don Quixote when I've been told again that red edition with the antique helmet on the cover, the Grossman translation, is the one to have. I think I have this out of habit of keeping Penguin Classics. So anyway, with everything we've looked at, here you can see we have some proper classics of Greece and Rome. I won't give more details than that. I mean, what am I going to say about Plato? So let's go on. Okay, then this shelf is just a mess. Let's be honest. I mean, we have Uncle Tom's Cabin. We have Rumi. I love Rumi, incidentally. But then we have Melville, Penguin Book of Renaissance Verse, Spanish novels, early English poems, Edith Wharton, Edgar Allan Poe. Again, gosh, I have Edgar Allan Poe all over the place here. The Wind in the Willow, which I love, as everybody should. A beat-up copy of Wordsworth. I need to get a new copy of Wordsworth, actually. What do we have? Bede. We have the Venerable Bede. Kipling. I love Penguin Classics, but I wish, and obviously I love Kipling, I still have the bookmark in it, I wish that this was a sticker I could remove. I absolutely hate it when they do that. To the point where I sort of resent this copy, and for a long time I would read out of the Oxford Classics edition, or another Kipling volume I have. Not because I like them better, I love Penguin Classics, but because of this stupid printed-on movie logo. I hate that. I hate it so much. Anyhow, then we have Dracula. And you can see we're starting to get into Trollope here, who I have developed a great love for. And we're about to see a lot more of him. And yeah, like I said, this whole shelf is a bit of a mess. Let's press on so we can get this done before my bedtime. Now down here we are getting into also some Oxford classics, but there's some odds and ends too. There's Modern Library here, and then, oh no, this is Oxford as well. But mostly I'm concerned with these Modern Library editions. These maybe you've seen out and about, Voltaire and Thomas Mann. I have not gone to these because they're so brittle feeling. And I'm just afraid that it won't survive. a reading. So if you've read these and like these and they survive, let me know. Otherwise, they are almost placeholders until I get better editions. Like, I don't think I have the Magic Mountain anywhere else in here. But that's just something I've thought about. If you have any confirmation on whether or not these hold up on readings, let me know. But then here we have Jane Austen, right? And also some Browning, who I've talked about before. These I don't need. Let's be honest, they're duplicates. I don't need these at all. So when I get more classics and if I need the shelf space, I think these are going to go, and odds are I just need better editions for these. But pressing on, we have classic Irish short stories. This is a great little edition. I wish I had it as a hardcover. And then we have Cecilia. This I have not read, and I don't know anything about. I think this was also a bargain rack buy, so let me know if you do like it. And then we get into 2 volumes of Anna Karenina. This is the first edition and this very copy that I read it in, the Bartlett translation. It's still my favorite. I think that may be out of perhaps a sense of attachment, although I do genuinely really love it. And Oxford did put this out as a hardcover, this translation with this cover, and I think I need to get that because I don't know how much longer this thing can take. I've read it several times. You can see the spine is warped and it's also taped up, but I am very much attached to that volume. I mean, it's the first time I read my favorite novel, so it makes sense. And then we have Chekhov and we have Dostoevsky. All right, so let's finish. We're finally going on to the last shelves here. Okay, we're just going to end here with Penguin Classics and Oxford Classics, so quite appropriately for these shelves. We have Byron, and I have not read any Byron. This is comparatively new, so I should sample it. I think that's the only Byron I have in this whole apartment. We have Bleak House, which I can't stand. I don't like that book. I'm not really a fan of Dickens, and I also can't stand the introduction by Terry Eagleton. In fact, I can't really stand anything Terry Eagleton has ever written or said. And then we have more Dickens, Great Expectations. And then down here we have Jane Austen's works, and then we get into the Bronte sisters and into George Eliot. Like any right-thinking person, I love Middlemarch, but I couldn't get into Daniel Deronda. And I didn't realize until comparatively recently that there's a lot of split opinions on this. So I think I need to binge BookTube videos of people praising and criticizing this, get a flavor for the debate, and then try going at it again. In general, I'm very happy with this whole shelf. I mean, I'm not going to say anything about Jane Austen that you don't already know. The only thing in terms of editions I'll add in is that in terms of these, the Professor, Shirley, and then also Agnes Grey, I don't love these copies. I want them in these more modern classics editions, especially this Agnes Grey. It's larger than the others. It clearly came over from the UK, and it's just not a sturdy edition. I could tell when I finished it, it wasn't going to hold up. So those certainly need to be replaced. So those are wonderful. And then let's go left here. Okay, and now we get into a lot of Russians, it looks like. In fact, almost all Russians, and maybe one German, I think, glancing at it. So here, this I got off a bit of a whim. I think it was simply a case of I saw Penguin Classic while I was used book shopping. So if you especially love this volume, let me know down below. Otherwise, I need to do my own research on it and decide whether or not I'm going to read it. And then we get into some Chekhov. I have to say, I like Chekhov. In fact, I like Chekhov's short stories much better than I like Dostoevsky's shorter work. In fact, outside of Crime and Punishment and a couple obvious things, I think I prefer Chekhov to Dostoevsky. I know there's probably, a commandment against that, but I just do. I love Crime and Punishment. You can see how beat up this copy is. I really, really love Crime and Punishment, but I don't love anything else, and even Brothers Karamazov kind of exhausts me, to be honest. So if you're interested in Chekhov, I think this Lady with a Lapdog selection is my favorite one that I have. And then we have several collections of Tolstoy. I think in particular here, I would recommend the Cossacks and Other Stories, and then Master and Man and Other Stories. I would not particularly recommend his nonfiction. He is, in a word, unbearable in his nonfiction, a rare example of an author whose fiction I prefer over nonfiction. And then we, of course, have Anna Karenina. Dostoevsky, like I mentioned, a hero of our time. And then we have Master and Margarita. We have this wonderful portable 20th century Russian reader, which we'd already saw. I don't know if I pointed it out, but we already saw it on the Viking Portable Edition shelves. Many of those were reprinted in these kinds of volumes, so just something to be aware of. And then we have another very much read copy of Anna Karenina. Maybe I like the book, huh? And then we have, of course, War and Peace. And I love this edition. It's just a nice brick in the hand. Really a great one to have. And that, I think, is all my Penguin Classics. So let's finish up looking at some Oxfords. And when I say Oxfords, I mean mostly Trollope. So there is Vanity Fair at the top. Okay, that's great. But then it's basically Trollope all the way through. Trollope, right over here. And then there's, oh man, what do we have? Herodotus and Hesiod, Jane Austen, and then we have Pamela. And at the bottom, it's Trollope all the way down to here. And then you get into Shakespeare, Wordsworth, and a couple oddities at the end. We have Veblen and Hume. Now, I will say, just because there is so much Trollope, in general, I like these volumes better, these older ones a little bit better. So this is the Duke's Children than I do. Oh my gosh, this is the Duke's Children in these more contemporary ones. I haven't done a complete comparison of the notes in each of them to see how different they are. But I really ought to do that because every now and then I will get to one of those older copies and find the notes aren't very good. All right, so like when I read the Claverings, I did not think the notes were very good. But earlier when I did a comparison, I found a few editions where I thought the older notes were better than the newer ones. So I think I need to take a couple hours one afternoon and just spend some time comparing them. Because although I like these older editions with these lovely paintings better than these tacky newer editions, if the notes are better, that matters more than the cover. Well, that's my classics. So let's zoom out a little bit here. That's what we covered. Sorry if this turned into a little bit of a mess, but I hope that gave some of you a closer look at my classics like you had wanted when I did my apartment tour, even though this was excessive. All to avoid the possibility of having a video under 20 minutes. Okay, all right, I have a whole week ahead of me. I'm going to call it a night. Thank you for tolerating this video. Have a good one.